Kia ora team, thanks for the good turnout tonight. There's a few of you on the screen, so much so that my screen is full up. Today's group coaching call is on when to call a session and pull the pin. Now, a number of you are going through, some of you are going through the winter blues, some of you are getting hit with the winter viruses, and others are getting injured. And there's a time and a place to not do your scheduled session. And we're going to cover off a few very broad, big picture type, hand waving type examples today. And then next week, I'm going to dive into a lot more nitty gritty because I know some of you have been challenged with some of the sessions lately. In particular, I think it was Tuesday's velocity cycle session. So we will go into a bit more detail next week. Today's the big picture, and next week we'll dive into the detail. So why does it matter? What's the point of pulling the pin? Why don't you just tough it out and push on through and do the session regardless? Now, there's a number of reasons. Sometimes you can't physically do it. You're just not up to it on any given day because you're coming down with flu, injury, burnout. They're all different things that contribute to the overall situation that means that training is harder than it should or could be. If you were to push through, it could push you over the edge, literally the straw that breaks the camel's back that leads through to the injury, illness, or full-on burnout. Now, I've been there a few times myself, and it's not a pleasant place to be. And I know with who is on the call tonight that some of you have been to those positions as well, with the burnout, with the injury, and also your training-induced illness. Doing too much training can lead to the illness itself. It might just be a small niggle that if you managed it without pushing through the training would have been fine, but because you pushed on through the training, it ballooned into a bigger illness that took longer to recover and spent more time out of training. So we want to try and avoid those situations so you can get over things quickly and move back in, staying fit and healthy and completing more training in the long term, not necessarily the short term. So the athlete mindset often, and I'm sure everyone's heard the saying, no pain, no gain. And it's a myth. Pain means something is not going right. And so there's a reason that that is the case. Discomfort is different from pain. And with discomfort, you do get gain. But when you're pushing to the point of pain, you are causing things to go wrong. And it's not a good place to be training wise. A lot of people's ego or their identity is tied up with being an athlete, and so therefore they must be training, particularly in the day of social media and Strava. If it's not on Strava, it never happened. Sometimes it's good that things don't happen, and so it's important that you manage your training with support from a coach, myself often, to make sure that you're doing the most appropriate thing, which isn't always what is planned or what is scheduled. So some red flags that should be not necessarily looked for, but when you see them, they shouldn't be ignored. I touched on the pain before. If you are in pain, whatever you're doing is not good for you. And I know Jamie's out doing a walk at the moment, which is really great to see, as he's working through the early stages of recovery from an injury. Hopefully we've caught that early enough, and particularly Jamie has caught that early enough, and he's been changing and managing his training, adapting it to what he can do. And it's quite good logging into Training Peaks and seeing what he has been doing. Levels of fatigue. Now, fatigue has been a big thing for me the last few days, particularly based around jet lag and returning from overseas. Within a few days, I flew from Finland to Hong Kong and then back to New Zealand. So there was 11 time zone changes that occurred there, not all in one go, thankfully. It probably would have been easier on me if they had all occurred in one go, as opposed to starting the adaptation process in Hong Kong, and then a few more hours through to New Zealand, where that has continued on. As it related to that jet lag, poor sleep has resulted. Not the first 2 nights. I think, Stu, you saw me when not long after I arrived, so you can probably confirm how shattered I looked. That was I think you even made a comment on that. I know a couple of people I bumped into definitely did, and I had some pretty solid sleeps the first couple of nights, but then the 2 nights since then, I've had some pretty horrid sleeps, is probably the best way of describing it. I don't have any illnesses, but with it being that time of the year where illnesses start to take hand here in New Zealand, it's important to keep, if you see any of these physical signs, it's an indication that something needs to change with your training. What we change is going to depend on what is going wrong. If you've got a broken leg and can't run, then maybe you can do something slightly different. If you're getting fatigued, reducing the training load so that you can do a small amount of training that's not going to add to that fatigue might be appropriate, or doing absolutely nothing may be more appropriate. Poor sleep, same situation as fatigue. Having a shorter, reduced intensity session is often a good situation or a good substitute there. And illness, depending on what the illness is, complete rest is usually the way to go. Other red flags may appear as mental or emotional signs with irritability, anxiety, loss of motivation, and that's what I referred to earlier as the winter blues. You're not super enthusiastic about your training right now, and I know there's at least one person on the call that fits that description, and then there's a couple of others that haven't made the call, so hopefully they will watch the replay on YouTube. And finally, the difference between being tired and overreaching. When we're trying to push your training like a few weeks out from a major event, like what Jess is going through at the moment, her training is getting pushed, although not as much as I would have if she wasn't also in the exam period at the moment. So I've held her back a little bit so that she's got enough energy for her study as well as her training, and hopefully that's not being compromised for you, Jess. But with a large or in a solid block of training leading into a major event, being tired is normal, and pushing what is normal for an athlete's training load should be expected. So we can get into that overreached sort of or situation. We don't want to be overtrained. That's where we push things too far. So we don't want to get to that. So managing that at the appropriate position for where you are within your training blocks or your build up to the event. Data and technology can play a key role in this by looking at your heart rate, particularly your resting heart rate overnight, your heart rate variability, which I talked about a few weeks ago, and then looking at the data within training sessions itself. How much power are you generating? Is that a normal amount of power? Is that low? Is it high? Your rating of perceived exertion, or RPE, is another indicator. So if your power and heart rate are normal for a workout, but your rating of perceived exertion is a lot higher, then something's not quite right at the moment, and we're probably delving a little bit deeper into that could come up with some suggestions or solutions to help untangle things a little bit. And also your sleep metrics. If your watch records your sleep data, having a look at that each morning, or even better if you can record it and keep a track of it in terms of the quality of sleep and how much sleep you're getting, can give a really good indication of what's normal. And if that changes, then we can look and see, well, why has it changed? Is there something causing stress? Is there something causing anxiety? Is it training? Is it work? Is it finances? What is causing that? Because that's going to have an overall impact on your health. And if your health is impacted, then your training is going to be compromised as a result. So if you wear a Fitbit, a Garmin, an Apple Watch, a Polar, a Sunto, all these watches, depending on the age of it, have all got some technology in them that provide you with a lot of this data. And you can record that within both Training Tilt and Training Peaks to get a good record of what's normal for you. And then when it changes, we can look back at that and get a better picture. But sometimes too much data is just overwhelming. And you can look at one thing and say, well, my sleep, I only had 6 hours. But when you look at the quality of that sleep or dive a bit deeper, your resting heart rate was low, your HRV is normal, everything else is normal. Just seeing one thing doesn't mean you need to give up on training for a few days. It might mean, hey, we'll see how the next couple of days go, um, and trusting how you feel a bit more than just having a look at the pure numbers. When you've got multiple metrics all sort of painting the same picture, then that's the time to trust the numbers a little bit more rather than your mindset or how you feel. Now, training adaptation does not equal completing every single session. I know some athletes get really stressed or anxious if they miss a session. And some people will even go out and try and do the same session again to get a better result than they got the first time. Now, there's a time and a place to do that, and it's usually a fortnight after you've done that session previously as opposed to the same day. But that training adaptation won't occur if you don't rest, and that's why doing it on the same day is not optimal. But if you're injured, ill, starting to come down with something, then it might be erring on the side of caution and having a rest day earlier in the week than intended, or reducing the volume, reducing the intensity from the planned session so that you can actually recover from the training you do. You don't make any improvements if you don't recover from that training. If that training is the start of a downhill spiral, then that's not going to leave you in a good position. So different types of sessions, there's different rules around what we're going to do with them. Easy and recovery sessions, we can be quite flexible and we can skip them if need be. When it's a key session, one of a main interval session for the week, or a long bike or brick session, we want to be smart about what we do. Do we do part of it? That's going to depend on what it is that is causing the problem. If it's an injury, an illness, um, then injury, we need to let that injury heal and recover. So if we were to do part of it, that's probably still going to cause some sort of damage or compromise your future capability. We might want to modify it if you're just starting to get the early stages of an illness or getting that early stages of being overtrained or too fatigued, then modifying it might be a better option. Maybe it's got 6 reps in it. Maybe we cut that down to 3. Maybe with that reduction in total intensity, we might have a bit more time to put some longer rest intervals in there so that you can recover between those intervals a little bit more. It'll change what the ultimate outcome from that session is, but it'll also mean that you don't continue down that pathway of spiraling into a case of being overtrained. It might be that we just cut all the intervals out, all the intensity, and just have an easy day of either the same or slightly reduced duration. It's going to depend on a few different circumstances. And the same with the brick and long sessions with a long run or a long ride. They're key sessions to build that aerobic fitness. But if going out and doing a 4 hour ride is going to be 2 hours too much, then we're better off doing 90 minutes and having that 30-minute of fat there just in case you're a little bit late home. And having a look at some of the charts within Training Tilt and Training Peaks can give us a little bit of an insight into that, particularly the performance management chart. We'll cover that a little bit more next weekend. So some common scenarios and likely solutions on how to move forward appropriately. And if you're starting to come down with a cold or a virus, we're going to want to reduce your volume significantly, particularly in the early stages until we're over that. Now, if the cold, it's just purely a head cold, you can still train. That's not going to have a major impact on thing. I certainly wouldn't recommend high intensity intervals. and I wouldn't recommend ultra long sessions. But reducing some volume, taking out the intensity is going to be fine if it's a head cold. If the cold's down in the chest, lots of phlegm, COVID, those sort of things, or viruses, don't train, just rest. If you really have to do something, spend 30 minutes stretching, nothing more, recover, minimize everything that you do. Now, if you've had a couple of nights poor sleep or have got high life stress, then reducing your training volume is going to be a good option. If that the poor sleep continues, then having a rest day or two back to back might be a good way to help with that sleep. Do some stretching. The life stress, you're going to need to remove that stress somehow, reducing the overall stress in your life, because training is a stress, is going to play a role in that. So cutting that out or significantly reducing it is going to be key there. Now, DOMS is delayed onset muscle soreness. Anyone who's done a big set in the gym, hasn't or gone back to the gym having not been there for a long time, or maybe returned to cycling or running with a big set of hill reps, then you'll know the feeling that you get sort of 36 to 72 hours after a big session. It's where the muscles have been challenged, but you don't feel that soreness for a day and a half, 2 days later, or even 3 days later. Sometimes it will turn up. That DOMS is your body limiting what you can do so it can get some recovery. The injury pain is the sharp, aggressive pain brought on by some damage that's occurred to some of the structures in your musculoskeletal system, whether it's bone, whether it's muscle, whether it's tendons or ligaments. Traveling, that's something else that can throw not just stress, but poor sleep, compromised immune function. There's a whole lot of things that come about from travel. I'm sure I've definitely written an article. If I haven't done a coaching call about traveling, then I might be due to do one again in the near future. Traveling to events, particularly, jet lag can play a major role in that, but also managing your training around that traveling can help minimize the jet lag. Now, my Garmin, and it might be another series for a bather watch actually. The Garmin, if you program in your flights, it'll give you advice around minimizing the jet lag. And with my recent travel, it's certainly given some good tips. It hasn't quite initially told me what it's told me some things that it wants me to do that I disagree with, but it's also given me 90% of it has been really great tips, telling me it'll just, an alert will come up and it will tell me to avoid caffeine from this point onwards. Told me to go to sleep 2 hours before my flight from Finland to Hong Kong, and it wanted me to sleep right through the flight without waking up to board the plane. There's some, I'll say, glitches within the system. But overall, it was giving some pretty good advice in terms of when to go to sleep, when to try and do some training, when to avoid light, when to sleep, etc. Fueling is another key thing. If you're not fueling appropriate for the workouts, you're going to be getting less out of those workouts than you otherwise could or should, and you're going to compromise your training and also potentially could lead to injury or illness as a result. So fueling is important and making sure you're appropriately fueled for your workouts. So, coach's responsibility versus athlete's intuition. I sort of encourage all of you to make a lot of decisions around your own training. I plan your training. I try and plan it appropriately within your week as what is a normal or standard week for you. But when things are out of kilter with your week, if you've got other commitments that come up, if you forewarn me like Jess has with her exams, it gives me the opportunity to plan around those events for you. If something comes up at short notice, I'm not sitting in front of my computer constantly. I'm not looking at everyone's training plans depending on the level of coaching you're getting or whether it's a training plan. I'm not sitting in front of the computer to move sessions around each day for you. So a lot of you will need to make some of those decisions yourself. And a Facebook, only ever a Facebook message away. Um, but if you can't do your long run on your normal day and swapping it with another day, those sort of things, I'd much rather you get some training done each week rather than miss training because you can't do your key session on the day that was initially scheduled. So having the ability to adjust your weeks is I feel key for you to have some own responsibility in your own training and moving those sessions to the appropriate day. I will step in and give you some feedback if you move it and move it to a really poor choice. And to be honest, there is no such thing as a poor choice. Training that gets completed is always better than getting no training completed. But I might give you some feedback on more suitable options that you can consider next time. And it might be you'd already considered those options and put it where it best fitted within your week. And because I don't know your ins and outs of every single day and your daily and weekly changes, then I'm not in a position to make those decisions all the time. But feel free to send me a Facebook message, particularly if you're feeling pretty crook leading into a key session. Do we move them to later in the week, or do we just say, hey, we'll miss these sessions this week, we'll do them again next week? For those of you that do make the decisions to make some changes yourself, adding those into the comments gives me some more information to give you the most appropriate feedback. And whether you type that into Training Peaks or Training Tilt, that's the best place for it. And I encourage you to do so. But also, if you send me a Facebook message, I'll get that as a notification on my phone rather than the next time I sit down and look at Training Tilt or Training Peaks specifically. So, looking at long term success, consistency is going to be the key as opposed to perfection. Training should be a lifelong practice. And I'll just look at Tanya. She's top of my screen at the moment. I'm not sure why Zoom orders people the way they do, but she's sitting there, and I know Tanya has been racing in the sport of triathlon and competing for as long as I have. I think we decided once it was 1993, might have been the first time Tanya and I did the same race together, the Wairoa Triathlon on the East Coast. And I know she started doing triathlons prior to that. In fact, it might have been the first time I raced your daughter as well, but she wasn't born then, was it? Is that right, Tanya? Does that story ring a bell? Um, and I know Tanya had been racing for a couple of seasons or more prior to that, and I had been as well. So missing the odd session in a lifetime of training practice is not a big deal. And I'd much rather you miss the odd session occasionally to get your plan back on track and ensure that you can continue that lifelong training practice. You'll find yourself in a lot better situation. Now, I know there's plenty of articles on, you can Google them, for people that have ran for 5,783 days continuously and then they broke their leg and couldn't do the next day. Yes, they've done an amazing feat. But at the end of the day, if they needed to have a break to mitigate some issues because they got ill or injured, then you're better off doing so so you can come back stronger and complete the overall training plan rather than pushing through and starting that downward spiral that leads to injury or illness. Um, just looking at Jamie, I'm not throwing him under the bus, but Jamie, I'm sure you won't mind if I share a story about you. When you first came on board with Quick Kiwi, I reduced your training significantly to develop that consistency. And if my memory serves me correctly, over about 4 weeks, your 5K running time improved by a minute and a half or 2 minutes, simply through the success of having that consistency in your training rather than going out and doing insane mileage in the weekend and then spending the next 4 or 5 days recovering so that you can do that again. Yeah, so that's the benefit of having that consistency of training. You get that improvement and you get it reasonably quickly. And missing a couple of sessions, you're not going to lose it like that either. Any questions on the overall, the big picture side of the concept? Like I said, next weekend I'll dive into a lot more specific details, and particularly around a few key sessions that I know some of you have been challenged with lately. Looks like you're trying to unmute there, Jamie.
No, mate, just tapped my screen as I'm trying not to get hit by cars.
Okay. No worries. Just while you're unmuted, no one's had any questions about the topic, but now's the time we'll go around the room and answer any generic questions about your training, about anyone's training. And it'll be good to, I know I've sent some messages to some people, and I know others have already booked in appointments now that I'm back for a catch up. And I've got a few more people to message and say, we're due for a catch up, book a time. So standard link for anyone that hasn't had that message yet. Just click on and book a time. We can have a bit more of a detailed chat about your training. Did you have any questions, Jamie?
Yeah, well, just with what I've got my next event in 4 weeks, and obviously my knee being a bit of a diddle, I'm still going to do the event. Let's not kid ourselves here, unless my leg's falling off. But just continue doing what I'm doing just now to, maintain, I
Yeah,
suppose.
absolutely. And when we catch up, we'll talk in a bit more detail about that. I know you've got your physio appointment coming up, and a lot of it will be guided by what Raylene says in terms of what exactly is wrong with the or what is the diagnosis and what's the pathway forward. I know your mindset, and I know that you will be doing the event regardless. So it'll be a case of doing the event appropriately based on your limitations. And I know you'll manage your goals appropriately based on that. So I've got no qualms, unlike some other people that might be a little bit more pig-headed and try and run the first portion. And that's when the knee blows out totally. And then they continue the walk. I know you'll be a lot more managed with both your expectations with around the injury limitation and an appropriateness for the goals for the event. So I have no qualms with that for you.
If it's really cheesed, I'll probably just drop to the half marathon. So.
Yeah.
What's the event? Sorry, I'm being
Uh,
nosy.
uh, the Woo 2K, 45K.
Ah,
Two,
okay.
Are you familiar with
so,
that event, Tanya?
Yes, I haven't
The,
done it, but yeah,
the 2K is an indication of the vertical.
vertical, yeah.
fun times, fun times.
Always fun times with your training, Jamie.
Yeah. Nothing else from me, mate.
Sweet. All right, we'll just keep moving down the screen. So, Jason, you're next.
No questions here.
Okay, no questions here.
Welcome home, though.
Thank you. You just missed out that question. I don't know where that came from. It should have been no here. Sweet. Just make sure there's no one else below. Oh, now my screen's shuffled. I'm not sure who moved, but Jess is immediately below you, so we'll go to Jess from here.
Hopefully my Wi-Fi doesn't cut it out, but if it does, it shouldn't for too long. Um, no, I've been pretty good. My exams have been making me a lot more tired than I think I've thought it would. And you're right with it, like the HRV on my watch, I can always tell the day before what it's going to be. So it's been probably the lowest it's been a few times. It's gone back to normal now, but I'm almost at the end of the exams, thankfully. But no, I'm excited to race in 2 weeks. But yeah, obviously like it's been good to have the training at the same time, but it is hard doing both. Um, but I was gonna ask if I can do my run tomorrow on the track again?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
I can, it was the stride. I can't remember what the session is, but yes. Yep. Fly around that track.
Yeah, it's like an hour 10, so yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
You
I
avoid the
find it
track.
easier to like stay.
Yeah. Avoid the track for the warm up and the cool down. Just go around Logan
Yeah,
Park or something
yeah,
and hit the track for the hard intervals.
yeah. I'll probably run there from here as my warm up. So
Yep. And use the outside lanes. It's not set on distance, so yeah.
yeah.
Perfect. Now underneath you is Jamie. We started with him, so we'll jump Jamie and go to Gareth.
No specific questions. I'll say this week has been terrible for me. I felt very fatigued and very run down. And uh, yeah, today's run was terrible. Like you'll wait till you see my stats. I won't call them out on the call, but yeah, not particularly proud of my run today. But
What
I
were
got
the
out there and did something.
what were the weather conditions?
Bitterly cold, about 10 degrees. No wind, but yeah, sun had gone down and it was cold. Um, and otherwise it was good weather, but I decided to go out on the road because I'm fighting a my leg problem and I need to train on the road to make that better. So that probably didn't help, to be honest. I probably should have stayed indoors and done the treadmill, but then I'm not going to get better at running on the road. So, all in all, I'm glad I did it, but I don't feel great about it. So, um, I'm thinking, I'm wondering if actually I should cut my training back next week and have a bit of a recovery week. But that's probably my only question, and it's kind of timely with this coaching call.
Sweet. Yeah, I'll have a look at the specifics. I'll have a look at the data of that run, and I'll flick you a message afterwards once I've had a chance to look at that, so I can be a bit more specific with my response.
Cool, sounds good.
Yep. Do you record your resting heart rate or HRV or anything?
I don't. I do occasionally if I remember if I put my watch on overnight.
Okay.
But my strap gives me eczema on my wrist, so I try not to wear my watch overnight all the
Does
time.
that for a few people.
I had a leather strap for ages and it was fine, but then that broke, so I've had to go back to the silicone strap.
Okay.
I
No
must get a
worries.
new strap, and then I will start recording it again.
Yeah. No, sounds good.
Right, that's it for me.
Sweet. And the screen's scrambled again. Jason spoke. Jess, down to you, Stu.
Yeah, I guess at the moment I'm just in a bit of a funk. Like I feel since Wanaka, my power's just dropped. Well, I just feel like I've fallen off a cliff, really. Um, and today was like I did the round Brunner race, ended up lying on the side of the road in a heap with cramp. Um, yeah, just everything. Not the ride today, get 50 k's in and then start battling cramp, and it doesn't matter whether I've got salts or electrolytes or whatever. High carb loading, low carb loading, doesn't seem to matter. Just want to cramp up. So I need to sort of get on top of that. And yeah, just I don't know, just lacking motivation, I guess.
Sweet. Like I said, you're clearly suffering from the winter blues. I'll have a deep dive in your data in the next couple of days and have a look at some recommendations specific to you. And now my screen's just jumped again, and you're right at the top now, Stu. Yeah, I'll get back to you. We've had a bit of back and forward chat, so I'm starting to build that picture. But I'll have that deep dive into your data as well.
Yeah, I had a quick look at velocity. I couldn't quite see in the settings where I could change the power zones to match what the Garmin power zones are. But like I mean, 90% of today's ride was all in the small chain ring spinning at sort of between 90 and 100 RPM, hanging onto the back of the buoys.
Yeah.
But if I tried to push the 52, I probably would have had both legs lock up again.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a bit of a battle, but the talk we've had, like I'm quite keen to try and set a challenge for the tour. That way I can watch the 45-minute highlights whilst smacking out a session.
Yeah. Sweet. And I said we'll get you on that Tour de France fastest cyclist challenge, and might be that someone like Tanya might be keen to jump on that as well. A 3 week training block focusing on building your cycling in line with the Tour de France. I'll send you some details, Tanya, or you can jump on my Instagram. Yeah, from you, Stu, like I'll do that deep dive in the next few days, and we'll continue our discussions. Um,
Right.
Tanya, I think that's everyone now. If I jump all the way down to you.
Yeah, just picking up on what Jess said, I think sometimes I underestimate how like mental exhaustion, like in a job, or that can impact training. So yeah, recognizing, I guess, when you've got that mental stress on in your life, that sometimes you got to dial it back. I had quite a easy week last week. This is my off season, and I really enjoy doing other things. I hang up my road bike a lot of the time and just get on my mountain bike. I do Rogaine events and that kind of thing, so that I'm still staying fit, but I'm not doing triathlon things all the time. And I think that's what keeps me sort of sane during the peaks, season. But I've got a bit of an early build with World Champs being in October in Australia, so my build will start in late July. Which is reasonably early, but yeah, don't have any questions. But I think Jess with her exams and that, it's a good point. Just that kind of mental fatigue that you get out of that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And each person in their different roles, whether a student or an employee or even an employer at different levels in the organization, all have different levels of stress within different roles. And so it's important that you look at your overall life stress, not just one key area. And training applies a physical stress on the body, financial and employment stress, work stress, study stress, all have a mental stress on the body, and that's an overall stress. So it's important to look at that whole big picture. So, all right, any other questions popped up? A few people shaking their heads, so we'll wrap things up. Thanks for everyone jumping on tonight. I realise there might be some people watching this later on that weren't on the original call. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out. Always happy to answer them. Thanks, team. Ka kite anō. Have a fantastic week. And the next few weeks, we'll have weekly group coaching calls to catch up with what I missed whilst being in totally different time zones.
Thanks, Ray. That was great.
You're welcome, team.
See
Thank you,
everyone.
Ray.
Ka kite.
Thanks. Good night.
Sorry.
Bye.